At the cabin, my family yelled, "Get out, you homeless freak." I flashed the deed and replied, "Clara does not own this." "I do. Now enjoy the freezing cold." Then the cops came. It is a tragedy, really. My mother's voice came through my phone speakers with the kind of practiced, honey-dipped sadness that usually wins her prizes at the local church bake sale. She was telling someone, probably one of her sisters, that I was too unstable to appreciate a home like this. Too broken. Too far gone. She said they were only there to protect the property from my inevitable downward spiral. I sat in my car, parked about 50 yards away in the thick, suffocating darkness of the Adirondack woods. It was 12 degrees Fahrenheit outside. The heater in my old sedan was humming, but I could still feel the bite of the mountain air through the glass. On my lap, my tablet glowed with the live feed from the living room security camera I'd hidden inside an old antique clock on the mantelpiece. My name is Valerie. I am 32 years old, and for the last decade, I've made a career out of being the person people are afraid of. I am a senior forensic auditor. My job is to stare at spreadsheets until the lies start to bleed through the numbers. I find the money that people think they've hidden. I find the signatures that were written by the wrong hands. I am very, very good at what I do. And right now, I was auditing my own life. I watched the screen as my mother, Beatrice, walked across the great room of my lodge. My lodge. I spent 5 years of 80-hour work weeks to afford this place. I picked out every slab of cedar, every piece of reclaimed oak for the flooring, and every slate tile in the massive fireplace. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, the one place where the world couldn't reach me. But there they were. Beatrice was wearing my favorite cashmere throw over her shoulders, the one I bought in Scotland. She was holding a crystal glass filled with my vintage Cabernet, a bottle I had been saving for my 35th birthday. It cost $500. She took a sip, made a face like she was a wine connoisseur, and sighed. "Poor Valerie," she said to the room. "The doctor said the trauma from the crash just snapped something in her brain. She's better off in that facility. It's safer for everyone." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wasn't in a facility. I was right here. I had been out of the physical therapy center for 3 days, but they didn't know that. They thought I was still tucked away in a sterile room, recovering from the surgery that saved my legs after the wreck. They thought they had months to finalize their plan. They were wrong. The camera panned slightly as my father, Clarence, walked into the frame. He's 58, but he carries himself with the unearned confidence of a man who has spent his entire life spending other people's money. He was wearing a new watch, a shiny gold piece that I knew for a fact he couldn't afford on his pension. "Did Sloane get the invitations out?" Clarence asked, dropping onto my leather sofa. "She did," Beatrice replied, her eyes lighting up. "The pre-wedding gala is going to be the event of the season. Preston's family is coming all the way from Connecticut. They need to see that Sloane comes from a family of substance. This lodge, it's the perfect backdrop. It says old money even if we're just managing it for her poor, sick sister." I felt a surge of bile in the back of my throat. Sloane. My 24-year-old sister. The influencer. She has spent her entire life curated for a lens, fueled by a deep-seated belief that work is something other people do so she can have a nice background for her photos. And Preston? He's a trust fund shark who smelled blood the moment he saw my bank statements. I watched as Sloane finally entered the room. She was draped in silk, her phone held out in front of her like a holy relic. She was doing a live stream, her voice hitting that high-pitched, fake sweet register she uses for her fans. "Hi guys. So many of you asked about the new house," she chirped, spinning around in my living room. "Yes, it's finally finished. It's been a long journey, but having this family estate to host my wedding events is such a blessing. I'm so grateful for my parents for making this happen." I checked the comments scrolling on her stream on my second device. Hundreds of heart emojis. People calling her boss babe and goals. She wasn't just stealing my house, she was stealing my identity, my hard work, and my reputation. We need to move the rest of Valerie's things out of the basement tomorrow, Clarence said, ignoring Sloane's filming. If Preston's parents see those boxes of audit files and old clothes, they'll start asking questions. We told them she moved to the West Coast for a high-paying job but struggled with substances. We have to keep the story straight. Don't worry, honey, Beatrice said. I'll have the junk hauled to the dump by noon. Junk. 10 years of my life. My professional certifications. My journals. My memories. All of it was junk to be discarded so they could play act as the owners of a luxury estate. They had no idea that I had spent the last 72 hours in a motel room 6 miles away, building a digital fortress. I hadn't just watched them. I had been rerouting every digital vein in this house. I had installed a secondary, hardwired mesh network behind the drywall when the house was being built, a fail-safe I never thought I'd need. I looked at the clock on my tablet. 11:59 p.m. The night before their big gala. The night they thought they were finally safe. Protection detail is over, Mom, I whispered into the cold air of my car. I moved my thumb to the red button on my custom app labeled System Reset. Time for an audit. I pressed the button. Instantly, the glow in the lodge windows vanished. The bright, warm light of the chandelier died. The outdoor floodlights, the porch lights, even the decorative lanterns along the driveway, gone. The mountain was plunged into a darkness so absolute it felt heavy. On my screen, the camera switched to the ghostly green of infrared. I saw Clarence jump. I saw Sloane scream as her phone's Wi-Fi signal died, cutting her off from her 1,000 adoring fans. I saw Beatrice stumble in the dark, dropping my Scottish cashmere throw onto the floor. The game was on. To understand how a woman like me, a woman who catches professional liars for a living, could let her own family steal her house, you have to understand the crash. 6 months ago, I was driving home from a massive audit in New York City. I had been working 18-hour days for 3 weeks. I was exhausted, the kind of tired that settles into your bones and makes your eyes burn. I fell asleep for maybe 3 seconds. That was all it took. My sedan clipped a guardrail and rolled twice down an embankment. When I woke up in the ICU, the world was a blur of white light and the smell of antiseptic. My legs were held together by titanium rods and hope. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the confusion. Beatrice was there, holding my hand and crying. "We've got you, Valerie. Everything is going to be okay. Just rest." I believed her. For the first time in my life, I let my guard down. I gave them my keys. I gave them my phone. I gave them the passcodes to my life because I couldn't even sit up to use the bathroom. I thought I was being a daughter. I thought I was letting my family love me. But the moment I closed my eyes, the vacuum started. By week 2, Clarence had convinced me that my mail was piling up and the bills were getting confusing. He brought a stack of papers to my hospital bed while I was high on heavy-duty painkillers. "Just sign these, Val," he whispered. "It's just a temporary power of attorney so I can pay the contractors at the lodge and handle the insurance from the wreck. You don't want to lose the house because a bill got lost in the mail, do you?" I was droopy, hurting, and terrified of being broke. I signed. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I signed a document that I hadn't audited. An auditor signing a blank check, it's the ultimate irony. As soon as that paper was in his hand, I ceased to exist as a person to them. I was just a bank account with a heartbeat. I spent 3 months in a physical therapy center 300 miles away. They chose it. They told me it was the best for my specific injuries. In reality, it was because the cell service was terrible and the visitors were strictly limited. Every time I called home, Beatrice would tell me the lodge was fine, but that there were issues with my accounts. "The insurance is fighting us, Valerie. They think you were at fault for the crash. We're having to use your savings just to keep the taxes paid." Then came the day the nurse accidentally left a newspaper in my room. It was a local Adirondack weekly. On the back page, in the lifestyle section, was a photo of Sloane. She was standing on my deck, holding a glass of champagne, with the caption, "Local influencer Sloane celebrates her engagement at her new mountain estate." New estate? My heart stopped. I didn't call my parents. I didn't scream. I went back to being the auditor. I used the facility's guest computer at 3 in the morning. I started digging. I didn't look at social media, I looked at the county clerk's digital records. My stomach turned as I found it. A lifetime lease agreement, filed 2 months ago. It gave Clarence and Beatrice full occupancy rights for the sum of $0 a month. It was signed with my name. But I knew my own signature. I knew the way I loop the V when I'm tired. This wasn't me. It was a trace. A bad one. Then I checked my bank accounts. Or rather, I tried to. My passwords had been changed. My recovery email had been changed to Sloane's. They hadn't just taken the house. They had systematically stripped my life. They had told my employer that I was taking a permanent disability leave. They had sold my jewelry. They had even rehomed my dog, telling me he had run away while I was in the hospital. That was the moment the unstable Valerie they wanted so badly actually died, and the forensic auditor Valerie took her place. I didn't cry. I started a spreadsheet in my head. The most brilliant, and disgusting, part of their plan was the social media campaign. Sloane was the architect of that. While I was learning to walk again between 2 metal bars, Sloane was building a narrative. She posted photos of herself looking solemn in front of my fireplace. The captions were masterpieces of manipulation. "So hard seeing my sister lose herself to her demons," one read. "Addiction is a family disease. We're doing everything we can to keep her safe in the facility, even if she hates us for it. The lodge is our family's healing space now. #family first #mental health awareness." She was using my house as a set to gain followers by playing the long-suffering sister of a junkie. I found out later from a former coworker who managed to get a message through that my parents had been telling everyone I'd had a nervous breakdown and started using pills after the accident. They told my neighbors that I was dangerous and that if they saw me near the property, they should call the police for my own protection. They were setting the stage. If I showed up and demanded my house back, I wouldn't be a homeowner claiming her property. I would be a disturbed, drug-addicted woman trespassing on her family's healing space. But they forgot one thing. I built that lodge. I didn't just pay for it, I designed the technical infrastructure. Clarence knows how to fix a leaky faucet, and Sloane knows how to use a ring light, but neither of them knows a thing about network security or smart home integration. They thought the admin account was the one link to the tablet on the wall. They didn't know about the secondary server rack hidden behind the false back of the pantry. I spent my last month in rehab pretending to be the broken daughter. I took their calls. I listened to their lies. I told them I was so grateful for everything they were doing. All while I was remotely accessing my home server from a burner phone I'd bribed an orderly to buy for me. I watched them through the cameras they forgot to disable. I listened to them plan Sloane's wedding gala. I saw Preston, her fiancé, measuring my master bedroom for his new office. They were so confident. They thought they had one. They thought I was a ghost. Well, it was time for this ghost to haunt the house. The lodge was now a dark, silent box. Inside, I could see the panic through the infrared lens. Clarence was fumbling with a flashlight he'd found in the kitchen drawer. Beatrice was clutching her chest, breathing heavily. "Clarence! What happened?" "The power. My phone is dead," she shrieked. "It's probably just a blown transformer in the storm," Clarence grumbled, his voice shaky. "I'll go check the breaker panel in the basement." "Good luck with that, Clarence." I had disabled the physical breakers from the main digital relay. Even if he flipped the switches until his fingers bled, nothing would happen. I had also engaged the electronic deadbolts on all the exterior doors. In high-end mountain homes like mine, these are fail-secure, meaning they stay locked during a power outage unless you have the physical override key, which I had in my pocket, or the admin code. I had effectively turned my sanctuary into a vault. And they were inside. I watched as Clarence reached the basement door. He pulled the handle. It didn't budge. He pulled harder, his face turning a dark shade of purple. "The door is stuck," he yelled. "Sylvia! The basement door won't open." "What do you mean it won't open?" Beatrice cried, stumbling toward him in the dark. "It's a wooden door, Clarence. Just push." He threw his shoulder against it. The heavy oak door didn't even shiver. I had engaged the concealed magnetic locks I'd installed for security. I sat in my car, sipping lukewarm coffee. It was cold in the sedan now, but the heat of my anger was keeping me warm. I wasn't just locking them in, I was stripping away their comfort. No heat. No light. No internet to call for help. No social media for Sloane to play the victim. The timing was perfect. In exactly 1 hour, the pre-wedding gala was supposed to begin. Preston's parents, the wealthy Mr. and Mrs. Sterling from Connecticut, were staying at a luxury hotel in town and were expected to arrive for a private dinner before the other guests. These were people who valued one thing above all else: status. They were the kind of people who would never allow their son to marry into a family involved in a public scandal. They thought they were joining their old money with another old money family. On my screen, I saw Sloane sitting on the floor in her silk dress, crying. Her phone was her lifeline, and without the Wi-Fi, she was nothing. "My followers, they're waiting for the live setup," she wailed. "Preston is going to be here in 30 minutes. We can't have a gala in the dark. Mom, do something." "I'm trying, Sloane." Beatrice snapped. "Clarence, get the door open. Use the axe from the woodshed." "The woodshed is outside, Beatrice." Clarence yelled back. "And the front door is locked. I can't get out." He ran to the front door and grabbed the handle. Locked. He tried the back door. Locked. He went to the windows. My lodge has custom, triple-paned hurricane-rated glass, a necessity for mountain winters. You can't just break it with a chair. They were trapped in a 5,000-square-foot icebox. I looked at the guest list I had pulled from Sloane's cloud account weeks ago. I had already sent a little gift to every single person on that list. An anonymous email containing a link to a private cloud folder. Inside that folder wasn't just junk. It was a curated collection of evidence. The forged lease. The bank statements showing my parents' spending spree with my money. The screen recordings of Sloane's fake addiction posts compared to my actual medical records from the rehab center. And finally, the video of them right now, fumbling in the dark like the thieves they were. I checked my burner phone. The Sterling family had opened the link 10 minutes ago. I could only imagine the conversation happening in their hotel suite right now. As the auditor, I knew that a case is only as strong as its documentation. I wasn't just relying on their panic. I had spent the last 3 days working with a local attorney, one who actually knew me and didn't believe my parents' lies. We had filed a notice of rescission for the power of attorney, citing fraud and medical incapacity at the time of signing. We had also filed a petition for immediate ejection. But I didn't want the sheriff to just show up and ask them to leave. I wanted the sheriff to see them in the act of being who they truly were. I watched the screen. Clarence was now frantic. He had found a heavy decorative brass statue, a gift from one of my clients, and was heading toward the glass doors of the deck. "I'm going to break it," he shouted. "We have to get out of here before the Sterlings arrive. We can say there was a break-in. We can blame it on Valerie. We'll say she came here and sabotaged the place." "Yes." Beatrice cheered. "Tell the police she threatened us. That's why the power is out. She's trying to kill us." The depth of their depravity shouldn't have surprised me, but hearing them plan to frame me for a crime while they were standing in the house they stole, it sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the Adirondack winter. Go on, Clarence, I whispered, watching the infrared screen. Break it. Make it a felony. He swung the statue. The sound of the impact didn't come through the audio perfectly, but I saw the result. The statue bounced off the reinforced glass like a tennis ball. Clarence stumbled back, clutching his arm in pain. He tried again. And again. On the fourth swing, the outer layer of the glass finally spiderwebbed. It didn't shatter. Hurricane glass is designed to stay in the frame, but it was ruined. Thousands of dollars in damage. It's breaking. Sloane screamed, her voice filled with a terrifying kind of glee. Now call 911. Tell them Valerie is here. Tell them she's smashing the windows. Sloane grabbed her phone. Even without Wi-Fi, emergency calls still go through on cellular. I saw her dial. I saw her put the phone to her ear. Help. Please, she sobbed into the phone, the best performance of her life. My sister, she's at our house. She's unstable. She's smashing the windows and she's cut the power. We're trapped inside. Please, send someone to the Miller estate on Lake Road. Hurry. I checked the GPS on my dash. The local sheriff's department was 4 minutes away. I had already called them 5 minutes ago to report a burglary in progress by 3 individuals at my address, providing my deed and the rescission papers. The 2 calls were about to collide. I put my car into gear and slowly began to roll down the driveway, my headlights off, moving like a shark in the water. It was time for the final audit. I killed the headlights of my sedan and let the car idle at the very bottom of my long, winding driveway. The heavy pine trees shielded me from the lodge, but I had a perfect view of the front porch through my windshield, and a perfect view of the interior through my tablet. The temperature inside the house was dropping rapidly. When you shatter the inner seal of custom hurricane glass in the dead of an Adirondack winter, the mountain air does not knock. It invades. Through the microphone on the camera feed, I could hear the wind howling, rushing through the spider web cracks that Clarence had so violently created. It was 12 degrees outside. Without the forced air heating system, the massive open floor plan of the lodge was turning into an industrial freezer. Sloane was shivering violently. She had wrapped herself in a decorative faux fur rug she pulled off the floor, her expensive silk gala dress completely useless against the biting cold. Her makeup, flawless just 20 minutes ago, was now streaked with tears of absolute panic. I am freezing, she screamed, her voice echoing in the dark, empty space. Mom, do something. Call them again. Where are the police? Valerie is out there. She is a psycho. She cut the power and now we are going to freeze to death. Calm down, Sloane, Beatrice snapped, her teeth audibly chattering. She was huddled on the leather sofa, her arms wrapped tightly around her own chest. The police are on their way. As soon as they get here, we tell them Valerie showed up high on drugs, smashed the glass, and sabotaged the breaker box. We stick to the story. Clarence was pacing back and forth near the damaged glass door, holding the heavy brass statue like a club. He was trying to project the image of a protector, but his breathing was shallow and erratic. He was a coward who had only ever fought battles with forged signatures and stolen credit cards. Faced with physical darkness and the biting cold, he was shrinking. What if she comes inside? Clarence muttered, peering out into the pitch-black woods. She knows this house better than we do. What if she has a key? She does not have a key, Clarence. Beatrice yelled. We changed the locks. And even if she did, the deadbolts are stuck. Just keep your story straight for the cops. She is a trespassing addict. We are the victims. Say it with me. She is a trespassing addict. We are the victims, Clarence repeated, like a mantra. I sat in my warm car, listening to them rehearse my destruction. They were so committed to the lie that they had convinced themselves it was the truth. They truly believed that because they were my parents, they were entitled to the fruits of my labor. My money was their money. My house was their house. And my life was just collateral damage in their pursuit of comfort. But a forensic auditor knows that a lie is just a debt. And eventually, all debts come due. I reached into the passenger seat and picked up my evidence binder. It weighed almost 4 pounds. It was filled with 200 pages of bank statements, medical records, digital footprints, and legally notarized affidavits. It was not just a folder, it was a financial guillotine. I looked up at the rearview mirror. In the distance, reflecting off the snow-covered branches of the pine trees, I saw the rhythmic flashing of blue and red lights. The local sheriff's department was making their way up the mountain road. The sirens wailed, a sharp, piercing sound that cut through the silence of the frozen woods. 3 heavy-duty police sport utility vehicles turned onto my private road, their high beams sweeping across the thick snowbanks. They drove past my parked, darkened sedan without noticing me, their focus entirely on the massive, unlit lodge at the top of the hill. I waited exactly 60 seconds after they passed before I turned my headlights back on and slowly followed them up the driveway. When I reached the top, the scene was pure chaos painted in flashing blue and red. The officers had positioned their vehicles in a semicircle around the front porch, using their doors as shields, their spotlights illuminating the front of the house. They had received 2 conflicting 911 calls, one reporting a home invasion by an unstable family member, and another, from me, reporting an active burglary by individuals with forged documents. The police do not take chances in the dark. Sheriff's Department, a loud voice boomed over a megaphone. Anyone inside the residence, step away from the doors and keep your hands visible. Through the window, I saw Clarence drop the brass statue like it was on fire. He raised his hands, his face pale in the harsh glare of the police spotlights. Sloane and Beatrice were huddled behind him, crying hysterically. I parked my car right behind the police cruisers. I took a deep breath, letting the cold air fill my lungs, and stepped out into the snow. I did not wear a coat. I wore a tailored black suit, crisp and professional, the uniform of a woman who was about to conduct a very serious meeting. I held the heavy binder against my side. "Stop right there. Keep your hands where I can see them," an officer shouted, pointing a flashlight directly into my eyes. His other hand was resting on his holstered weapon. "My name is Valerie," I said, my voice calm, projecting clearly over the sound of the idling police engines. "I am the homeowner. I am the one who called in the burglary in progress at this address. I have my identification and the deed to this property in my hands. I am unarmed." The lead officer, a tall man with a thick gray mustache whom I recognized as Sheriff Miller, lowered his flashlight slightly. He looked at me, taking in my professional attire, completely contradicting the description of the crazed, drug-addicted intruder he had been given by Sloane. "You are Valerie?" Sheriff Miller asked, stepping forward cautiously. "We received a call from a young woman inside saying you were attacking the house." "The people inside are my parents, Clarence and Beatrice, and my sister, Sloane," I replied, holding up the binder. "They have been occupying my home without my permission while I was recovering from a severe car accident in a medical facility. They forged a power of attorney and a lifetime lease. I have every piece of documentation right here, including the metadata proving the forgery. The house is currently in lockdown mode because I triggered the security system remotely to stop them from fleeing." Right at that moment, Clarence managed to manually disengage the damaged sliding door from the inside. He stumbled out onto the freezing deck, his breath pluming in the air, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Arrest her!" Clarence screamed, his voice cracking. "She is crazy. She cut the power and tried to freeze us to death. She smashed the glass. She is a junkie, officer. Check her car, I guarantee you will find pills." Sheriff Miller looked from the frantic, sweating man on the porch to me, standing perfectly still in the snow with my binder. "Ma'am, step toward the cruiser, please," the sheriff said to me. The audit had officially begun. I walked over to the hood of the police cruiser, the metal cold under my hands, and opened the heavy binder. The bright police spotlights illuminated the crisp white pages. Sheriff Miller approached, signaling his deputies to keep Clarence and the screaming women on the porch. "Let us start with the basics, Sheriff," I said, speaking with the measured, even tone I use in courtrooms. I flipped to the first tab. Here is the original deed to the property, registered solely in my name, dated 4 years ago. Here are my property tax receipts, paid from my personal account. The sheriff scanned the documents. "Okay. But your father inside claims he has a lifetime lease, and that you gave him power of attorney after your accident." "Tab 3, I said, flipping the page. "This is the power of attorney document they filed. Notice the date. It is dated October 12th. Now, look at tab 4. These are my medical records from the intensive care unit at Mount Sinai Hospital. On October 12th, I was in a medically induced coma following extensive orthopedic surgery. It is medically and physically impossible for me to have signed that document." The sheriff's eyes widened. He looked at the medical records, then back at the signature on the forged document. The realization of the felony was starting to set in. "Furthermore," I continued, turning to the next section, "here is the lifetime lease they filed. They printed this using a standard color laser printer. As a forensic auditor, I work closely with document authentication. If you look closely at the blank spaces on this lease, under a blue light, you will see a pattern of microscopic yellow tracking dots. It is a security feature built into all modern printers. The dots encode the printer's serial number and the exact time and date the document was printed." I pulled a small ultraviolet pen light from my pocket and clicked it on, shining it over the signature line of their fake lease. The tiny yellow dots glowed like a constellation. I ran this serial number through the manufacturer's database using my firm's investigative resources, I stated clearly. This document was not printed 6 months ago when they claimed I signed it. It was printed exactly 4 days ago, from the printer currently sitting in my own home office on the 2nd floor of this lodge. Which means not only did they forge my signature, but they committed perjury by filing a fraudulent document with the county clerk. Sheriff Miller stared at the glowing yellow dots. He was a small-town cop, but he recognized an airtight federal case when it was handed to him on a silver platter. He turned his gaze toward the porch. Clarence was no longer yelling. He was watching us, his face slack with a sudden, horrifying realization. He could not hear what I was saying, but he could see the sheriff nodding. "They also drained my savings accounts to fund a lavish lifestyle and pay for my sister's wedding," I added, closing the binder with a sharp snap. "That falls under grand larceny and wire fraud. And because they used the United States Postal Service to mail some of these forged bank transfers, it is also mail fraud. I have already contacted the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but I needed local law enforcement to secure the premises and process the immediate break-in." "Break-in?" the sheriff asked. "They had a key." "They forged a lease to get the key," I corrected him. "That makes their entry illegal. And tonight, when I remotely locked down my own smart home to secure the premises, Clarence used a brass statue to intentionally smash $5,000 worth of custom hurricane glass to try and escape. That is felony destruction of property." Sheriff Miller let out a long, heavy breath. He reached for the radio on his shoulder. "Dispatch, we are going to need a transport van up here at the Miller estate. We have multiple suspects for grand larceny, forgery, and destruction of property." Just as the radio crackled with a confirmation, a sleek, black luxury town car came creeping up the icy driveway, its headlights cutting through the flashing police lights. It parked right next to my old sedan. The rear doors opened, and a distinguished-looking older couple stepped out, bundled in expensive wool coats. Following them was a tall, handsome man in a tailored tuxedo. It was Preston, Sloane's fiancé, and his extremely wealthy, status-obsessed parents, Mr. and Mrs. Kensington. They had arrived for the gala. The timing of the universe is rarely this poetic. As Mr. and Mrs. Kensington stepped out of their chauffeured car, their faces immediately contorted in shock and disgust. They had expected valet parking, a string quartet, and a warm fire. Instead, they walked into a freezing crime scene lit by police cruisers, with their future daughter-in-law shivering on a porch next to a shattered glass door. "Preston, what on earth is going on here?" Mrs. Kensington gasped, clutching her pearls, literally clutching them. She looked at the police officers, then at the house, and finally at me. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" Before Preston could answer, Sloane saw her lifeline. She let out a theatrical wail and ran down the snowy porch steps, her bare legs trembling in the freezing air, and threw herself toward Preston. "Preston! Thank God you are here!" Sloane sobbed, reaching out to grab his tuxedo jacket. "My sister, Valerie, she has gone completely insane. She showed up high on drugs, cut the power, and called the cops on us. Tell them who I am. Tell them this is our house." Preston looked at Sloane, then looked over at me standing next to the sheriff and the massive binder of evidence. He did not step forward to hug her. In fact, he took a very deliberate half-step backward. I had included Preston on the anonymous email blast I sent out an hour ago. He had seen the folder. He knew the money was gone. He knew the house was not hers. And more importantly, he knew his parents were watching. "Sloane, stop," Preston said, his voice cold and distant. He looked at his mother, embarrassment burning on his cheeks. "Mom, Dad, get back in the car. This is a family matter that does not concern us. It most certainly concerns us if our son is engaged to a criminal." Mrs. Kensington snapped, her voice carrying sharply in the cold air. She turned her nose up at Sloane as if my sister were a pile of garbage on the sidewalk. "I received a very disturbing email tonight with bank statements." "Is it true, Sloane? Have you and your parents been living off stolen money?" Sloane froze. The color drained entirely from her face. The fake tears stopped instantly, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated terror. The illusion was dead. The influencer had lost her audience. "No. No, Mrs. Kensington, it is a lie. Valerie faked those." Sloane stammered, her voice pitching into a hysterical squeak. "She is a drug addict. The police are about to arrest her." Sheriff Miller cleared his throat, a loud, authoritative sound. He stepped away from my cruiser and walked toward the porch, unsnapping the leather strap over his handcuffs. 2 deputies followed closely behind him. "Actually, Miss," Sheriff Miller said, his voice carrying the heavy weight of the law, "the only people getting arrested tonight are you and your parents. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." "What? No. You cannot arrest me. I have a gala tonight." Sloane screamed, backing away from the deputies. Clarence rushed forward, puffing his chest out. "Now wait just a damn minute, Sheriff. You cannot take the word of this mentally unstable woman over us. We are upstanding citizens. I demand you search her. I saw her doing drugs in her car. Search her pockets right now." He was desperately trying to pivot back to their original plan. As Clarence yelled, distracting the deputies for a fraction of a second, Sloane made her final, most pathetic move. She lunged toward me. Not to attack me, but to brush past me. I saw her hand dip into the small silk purse she was clutching. She pulled out a small, clear plastic baggie filled with white powder and tried to jam it into the side pocket of my suit jacket. She was trying to plant narcotics on me right in front of the police. I did not flinch. I did not fight her off. I simply took one large step backward, letting her hand hit empty air. The baggie of white powder dropped onto the pristine white snow between us. "Officer," I said, my voice cutting through the yelling like a razor. I pointed a steady finger up at the wooden eaves above the front door. "I would like to direct your attention to the high-definition, night vision security camera mounted right above us. It records directly to an encrypted cloud server. It just captured my sister attempting to plant a controlled substance on my person." Sloane looked down at the baggie in the snow, then looked up at the camera. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish suffocating on dry land. She had nothing left. No lies. No excuses. No audience. The deputy grabbed Sloane's arm and aggressively twisted it behind her back. The sharp, metallic click of the handcuffs echoing in the cold mountain air was the most beautiful sound I had heard in 6 months. "Sloane Miller, you are under arrest for possession of a controlled substance, grand larceny, and conspiracy to commit fraud," the deputy recited, marching her toward the back of a cruiser. "Preston! Do something! Call a lawyer!" Sloane screamed over her shoulder, her voice cracking in desperation. Preston did not even look at her. He turned to his parents. "Let us go. The driver is keeping the car warm." The three of them climbed back into the black town car and reversed slowly down the driveway, leaving Sloane to watch her golden ticket drive away forever. It took the police another 20 minutes to process Beatrice and Clarence. Beatrice cried genuine tears this time, sobbing about her reputation at the church as they patted her down and cuffed her. Clarence remained silent, staring at the ground, finally broken by the realization that he was a small man in a world of serious consequences. Before they were loaded into the transport van, a heavy-duty tow truck rumbled up the driveway. Its yellow warning lights flashed against the snow. "What is he doing?" Beatrice cried out from the back of the police cruiser, her face pressed against the window. The tow truck backed up to the brand-new, white Lexus SUV parked near the garage. "The car Sloane had bought with the money they drained from my medical emergency fund." "That vehicle was purchased with stolen funds," I informed Sheriff Miller, who was handing me a copy of the police report. "I reported it to the dealership and my bank this morning. It is being repossessed." I stood on the snowy driveway and watched as the tow truck hoisted the symbol of their vanity into the air. The transport van carrying my parents and my sister pulled away, following the tow truck down the winding mountain road, their red tail lights slowly disappearing into the dark, freezing woods. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was not oppressive. It was clean. It was the silence of a balanced ledger. I walked up the steps to my porch. The cold was still biting, but I did not mind it anymore. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened my custom smart home application, and pressed a single green button. Instantly, the lodge came back to life. The warm, golden lights of the chandelier illuminated the great room. The outdoor floodlights clicked on, pushing back the shadows of the forest. The gentle hum of the forced air heating system kicked in, breathing warmth back into the frozen bones of the house. I stepped inside, carefully stepping over the shattered glass of the door. The house was a mess. There were party decorations scattered everywhere, and the smell of Beatrice's cheap perfume lingered in the air. But it was mine again. I walked over to the kitchen island, picked up the bottle of vintage Cabernet they had opened, and poured myself a generous glass. I walked over to the massive stone fireplace, ignited the gas logs, and sat down in my favorite leather chair. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted like victory. It tasted like peace. I opened my tablet one last time, selected the file folder labeled Case 894 Family, and hit delete. The audit was complete. I am sitting by my fireplace now, watching the snow fall outside the repaired glass. My family is currently being processed for third-degree grand larceny, forgery, and felony destruction of property. Sloane's influencer career is over before it started, and she is facing additional drug charges. Some people in my extended family have called me a monster. They say I should have just walked away and let them have the money to keep the peace, because family is everything. So, am I the jerk for professionally auditing my family into a prison cell, or did they get exactly what they earned? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for listening to Valerie's story. Justice is a dish best served with cold, hard evidence. If you enjoyed this professional takedown, please hit that like button and subscribe for more intense Reddit revenge stories. We will see you in the next one.